everybody. Sorry I wasn't on yesterday. I had trouble trying to get onto Facebook due to, as we know, the internet is not always 100%. And yesterday was one of those challenges of the internet not cooperating with me. So I was unable to come on yesterday, but here I am today with another of my educator. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the challenge and triumph of online teaching during COVID-19 at the Female Educators Roundtable with your host, Debby Enoe, and another of my guests from around the world. Can you please introduce yourself? Tell us the country you come from, the children you teach, and what you teach, please. Thank you.
Yes. Hi, my name is Margaret Taylor Russell, and I am coming to you from the United States. I live in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, right up north of Miami, and I am a middle school teacher. I have taught, this is my 6th year teaching, and this year I'm teaching 6th grade ELA, which stands for English Language Arts, and that is reading and writing.
Okay, thank you. 6th grade is what age group?
6th grade in the US is ages 11 and 12. And then in middle school is, we call it 6th to 8th grade. So it's technically ages 11 to 14. So it's a hard time. It's kind of like the bridge to high school.
It is, isn't it? And they have all this, baggages of adolescent, oh, you have all of that. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah.
Puberty, the boys,
all the hormones.
Exactly. The hormones are doing their own thing. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I see that. Okay. Well, as you guys know, for the past few weeks, I have been looking, a few months actually. My goodness, the time goes really quickly. I've been looking at the challenges and triumph of online teaching. As everybody knows, educators have not been trained on the online platform. Our training have been in the physical classroom. However, as educators, we are very adaptable. We think on our feet and we run with whatever is presented to us. So as a result of COVID-19, we had no choice than to actually run with what we've been given, i.e. we had to teach on the online platform. And I must say, as educators with no skills, no education on the online platform, we have done fantastic. We have swum across. We've done a brilliant job at it. Educators, do not beat yourself up and feel that you haven't done well. Yes, you have. You have not been trained to teach online. You had to teach yourself to teach online. At the same time, teaching the parents, teaching some of the students themselves to actually negotiate the online platform, because some of us have realized, as much as these young people are really technology savvy, they're not on the online platform savvy. They're not. Some of them don't even know what to do. Some of them, we don't even know much for ourselves as educators because we're teaching ourselves and we still have to try to teach them. Could you imagine that? And we've done well. We didn't fail. We've actually succeeded very, very well. Educators out there, you need to pat yourself on the back and stop crucifying yourself for what you didn't know. You've done well. You knew a lot more than when you started. Well done. Right, I've done my little spiel. Okay, Taylor, can you share with us some of the experiences of what you've had when you were teaching online, please?
Yeah, sure. I actually loved your spiel. I definitely needed it, so thank you. I started teaching online in March of this year. So like I said, I live in Florida, and we actually went online right after spring break. So it was I always say, like, it was very surreal the last day in my classroom, because some people had started pulling their kids out because of COVID, but there was just this very like weird energy in the building. And I just had a feeling that I wasn't going to be back in the classroom. So I kind of and they were going to close the building early. So I frantically gathered some things that I thought I would need and got my personal belongings. And then I didn't see my classroom for months after that, which, excuse me, as a teacher is very hard, because your classroom is like your second home. Mm-hmm. But sorry, I have allergies. So I started teaching after spring break online, and I had 3 classes. So I had about 75 to 80 students. And our school district is like one of the top 10 largest school districts in the entire United States. So there's a lot of students. And one of the things they were very clear with us about is that we needed to be taking attendance, because for us, attendance was as important, is not just about being in school, it's a safety check. As you know, as a teacher, when a kid walks in your room, you can always kind of make an eye contact with them, check in where they are. You never know what home situations are like. And especially at our school, which is a Title I school, which means that a significant amount of students are on government assistance. So there's definitely a fair amount of, there's just a lot of different economic situations that happen. So I think for me, the hardest part of online teaching in the fourth quarter, that last part of the year, was just not having kids around, not knowing where a kid was, because I had students that were working so hard, and they were able to work hard in my classroom because the distractions of the outside were not with them, where once they step out of my classroom and out of our school, they may go home to a household where their mom works late, where they're responsible for feeding their 2 siblings and putting them to bed. They may not even be at have supervision at home. We do have students that are homeless as well. So yeah, so it's a lot. I mean, Broward County is huge, and it encapsulates all of Fort Lauderdale and all a lot of areas, and there are lots of students that have English as a second language. So I was having to talk to families where, whether their family spoke Spanish or Creole, you just didn't know what the situation was like. And so when you add in the idea that they can no longer get out of the house, they have to have internet access, they have to have a device that's working. It just what it really did was it exacerbated all of those inequalities that are so present in the United States right now. It's really easy for us. We're such a big country, and there's so many different parts of the US. It's easy for people like, I live where, I have a house. Obviously I have dogs and I have a fiance just behind me, but I can turn my TV off and not really deal with other things that are happening in my city. But then when I become a teacher and I see that my student, says, I can't come to your class because I don't have internet, I don't have a computer, and I'm looking after my little sister. My mom's been gone for 3 days. You just, that brings it back. So on the other side of that, we were able to do some really creative stuff with the kids that quarter. And some of them really responded well to the virtual learning, but it was hard because not everyone had the access. And then one of the things, you're seeing, at least with it, for me in my area, is that, you have schools that are able to afford, private schools that are able to afford, cameras in their classroom. They're able to afford, just a lot of other stuff that has them have a big leg up on the year. And students, that have multiple computers in a household. So that's been difficult. But yeah, so I think that was my initial experience, was just a shock at the different kinds of inequalities that our students faced.
So what were you able to do in terms of, student that didn't have internet and wasn't able to engage on the online platform? How did you guys support them on an academic level, or were you able to support them on an academic level?
I mean, frankly, with last year, we were responding to such a we just wanted to finish the year. We weren't able to really reach them. I mean, we had a device pickup where kids could come get their devices, but a lot of kids, it was great, but a lot of parents didn't show up. You have parents that you just have different kinds of things going on. So there were kids that, I remember I had a student who I had worked with the whole year and who I was really proud of. And she we just didn't know where she was. We didn't have any kind of taps on her. She never showed up online. She never, so what our deans would do is they would, after, if a kid wasn't present and online for like a week, they would go to their house and do a wellness check just to make sure they were okay. So fourth quarter was last year, less about academically enriching kids that we couldn't reach. It was just about getting to them. It was about making sure they were okay, because again, like we have an enormous unemployment in Florida, and our unemployment system is purposely very complicated and confusing. So a lot of people's status changed very quickly. This year, I've been really impressed with how our schools, being proactive and, the way we are handing out devices, every kid's being reached. There is no option. They have to show up to pick up their laptop and every kid gets one. It's been a lot for the school, for people that work there on facilities and technology to program the computer so that they can work for kids. But there's an attitude right now of just like, we've got to get it to them. Like we have to give them a fighting chance, because, with mobile learning, if you don't have a device, like you have no chance, and there are children that, the primary grades are so important for writing and reading and math. And those are skills that they need desperately.
So you guys have already started teaching online, right? For this.
We actually start in like 5 days. So the teachers have come back to training. And we were a school, we're called a public charter school. So we are actually 100% publicly funded, but we are run by a private company. And the way it works is that we have a charter that the state gives us, and we have to keep up a certain academic record, or else they will pull our charter and we won't be able to exist anymore. That's how it works in our system. So the district that we were in decided to go 100% mobile learning, because our county is one of the epicenters of the virus right now. It's right next to South Florida has really struggled. So our boss decided to offer an in-person learning option. And then there was a lot of backlash from the teachers and from the families that basically said, why are you doing this? Why aren't you keeping people safe? You shouldn't be offering kids back on campus. Like, how are my kids safe if they're your school teachers saying you can't mandate I have to come to work during this? What if I get sick? There's just a lot of different questions. And then after, there was an editorial in the newspaper, and then we decided to go to 100% mobile learning. The point of that story was to say that while we were training originally for in-person and mobile learning, and then we had to quickly switch our gears to totally mobile learning. So we start next week totally mobile, and the goal of next week is to just have the kids be able to log on, just have the procedure down, not get very deep into content, obviously, but just we want to make sure that you're able to set everything up and able to learn from home.
Okay, thank you. In terms of when you did online, the first, when you started online, what was the attention, in terms of the students' attention and engagement? Those that were able to log on, what was the attention and engagement in terms of, when you're teaching, etc.? What was that all about? Were they able to?
So I think there's two ways that you measure that when you're teaching. The first one is by attendance, whether or not they chose to come to class. And then the second one is by, participation with the assignments. There were some really great success stories about it, as far as there were kids, whether, that just really did well with online learning. I have so a couple of we call them ESE students, exceptional student education. They have what we call individual education plans, and they have diagnosed learning disabilities or other kinds of intellectual disabilities. Because they were on an online platform, I was able to provide them more accommodations that I maybe not be able to in a classroom. Like, for instance, they could record their voice, reading something, or I could read something out loud to them if they had an accommodation because they had a processing issue. I had a student that did awesome. And because he was doing better in this, his attendance was up. So it was so great to see him every day and just be a serious student. Kids become serious students when they're confident about being students. We don't always get that right. We think that we're just going to beat a kid into being a serious student, but that's not how that works. A kid chooses to be a serious student when they're a confident learner. So yeah. And I think that that's a great story. I think that it was hard for them the engagement lacked because it was boring, like for them to be on call all day, like I had to make it fun. So this year I've been trying to include different kinds of things. So, but them sitting at their computer with the ability to distract themselves and being at home, it's hard to sometimes stay engaged if you're a 12-year-old.
How many hours at a time they were engaged on the computer? How many hours time was your lesson? How long was your lesson?
So in fourth quarter, they expected us to do two live sessions a week for 30 minutes each. And then they had what we called them work hours. So we would give them assignments to do outside of the live instruction, and they would come ask me questions or be for me for office hours, kind of like in college. And that was cool for my advanced and honor students, the ones that are very high achieving and independent workers, like that worked for them. However, for my struggling students or my average learners at a 7th grade or 6th grade level, they need more help. So this year, they were probably online for about 3 hours a day. This year, we want them online fully, we're having full class periods. I might not be teaching the whole time, but I'm going to be with them on camera the full time.
Okay. Thank you. In terms of behavior, what was the behavior issue? Did you have any behavior issue?
Oh my gosh, with 12-year-old boys, never, ever. Are you kidding me? They're angels. No, I have, I definitely was recorded on someone's TikTok once. So that definitely happens. I had a crazy bunch of kids last year, and I'm younger and I'm a female, so they like to mess around with me a little more than they do another kind of teacher. So they would do stuff like, before I learned how to cut off screen sharing on Zoom, like I would share my screen and they just like write all over it, or they'd share a screen. It was like insane because they know more than I do. One time I had paused for a second, and then this kid, because they hadn't seen each other in like a month at this point, gets on and tries to ask out this girl and like starts flirting with her. It was amazing. And then one of the last things they did was I was handing out, I was like, okay, everyone, your progress report's coming out. And then this one kid, he's like, hey, Miss Russell, I just was wondering, like, can you just keep this progress report between you and me and not talk to my parents about my report card? Like, let's just, we've been on the Zoom for a while now. Let's just keep this, like amigo. And I'm like, no. So we did have some behavior issues, but I think that once the teachers figured out the technology better, it got a lot less. So yeah.
It's interesting because you were talking about them writing on the screen. I had another educator, I think it was last week, and she said they wrote on the screen and she did not know how to get it off.
Yeah. It's hard, and you feel so embarrassed because they're just laughing.
Exactly. She said the more she said them, stop it, they were just writing on the screen. And she said when she finished her lesson, she said all 3 o'clock in the morning she was up going to YouTube to make sure how she know how to rectify that.
I had to lead I had to do a training at my school about how to like mute kids on a call. That's actually one good part about online learning is there's like a mute all button, and you can just mute all the kids and they won't talk anymore. You can't do that in the classroom.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the beauty buttons, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. You got to look at the bright side.
Okay, thank you. Did you have, in terms of community, how did you form a community and maintain the community online?
I love that question. something that we did, and my mentor at school, my co-teacher, she has another set of students. She recommended that we do this thing called the coronavirus memoir, and we had them write a memoir every week. They had to write a chapter, and it was just amazing because by like the third or fourth week of it, they were getting really honest, and they were talking about how hard it was, to not see people, how hard it was to see their parents. Like, I don't think that I realized how much they watched their parents, and so one way to form community was just to give them an outlet to just be honest, and people say a lot about kids that, oh, they communicate so much online and they're very connected, and that's true. But the thing is, on their platforms, they communicate often as like these alternate personalities, or they put on kind of how they want to communicate. So as a teacher, as a writing teacher, I just had them communicate as themselves. So the community was fostered really because they were being honest about where they were at, and they saw that other kids were like that. We did something really cool called I don't know if you have it in the UK, but May the 4th is known here as Star Wars Day, because it's May the 4th be with you. May the Force be with you. And I am a big Star Wars fan. And something that I noticed in my students' Zooms was a fair amount of them had like Star Wars stuff on their desks. And so I was like, you guys, May the 4th is coming up. Let's have a Star Wars Zoom. And so it was like so great, and they all loved it. A lot of the kids came to the Zoom and they were dressed in their Star Wars gear. They wrote their own like episode of Star Wars. Like it was such a great moment of community because they all just got to like be kids again. I think that they got to dress up and I dressed up like Princess Leia, and this boy was like blushing when he was talking to me. It was like so adorable, but yeah, that was so cute. So I think engendering community for me is really about letting them be kids, and that's something I need to remember when they come back to school, is whereas in the classroom, they kind of want to be adults, right? Like they feel like adults. But I think right now, I really need to remind them that they're kids. Like, let's play, let's build a Minecraft situation. Let's write a fun story, because they've had to deal with such adult stuff recently. So that's how I
That's very good. I like the idea of this this memoir. Are you guys going to publish it?
That's a great idea. I would love to do that. I'm going to talk to my our principal, because I definitely saved several of them that I want to look at, because I think, I have a background in history, and those kinds of writings are so important as sources. So I would love that. I would love to continue it, because I think that they, it's interesting, the things that I don't even think about, like, going with their mom to the grocery store and seeing that she's bringing back less food, seeing that they're not eating meat right now because it's too expensive, and they notice stuff like that, they're not being able to see their grandparents, or their grandparents getting sick, having someone pass away because of the virus. Like the things that these kids are dealing with and the teachers are dealing with is like, it's just unbelievable.
It's so, it's so interesting, because you see what actually came to mind when you were talking about the writing memoir. They all have so many different stories to tell, and so very different. So capturing that in a analog or in a book would be fantastic, or short story, it would be fantastic.
I love that. I love that for them too,
That'd be so fantastic. Give them something, a sense of being, and in spite of what's happened.
I love that. I'm definitely
self-worth.
Yeah, and I think it would even to have all the kids in our grades do it,
Exactly.
Yeah,
that would be fantastic.
It's going to be something that they're going to want to be able to remember. And most of my my students' family, they come from about probably 80% of them come from families, immigrant families, either their parents or grandparents, or even them. So they're also understand like this is a public health crisis. And so for a lot of these students, or for at least 50% of them, they're the primary English speaker in their household, and they're 12. So their mother or father or grandparent is sick, they're the ones that are having to communicate and dealing with doctors and dealing with CVS or the pharmacy. So what they're writing about is just like the amount of responsibility. And I don't, I'm privileged in a way that I didn't have to ever think about that, right? It's like a white Eurocentric woman, and whereas my students that are Haitian or the Jamaican or that come from Guatemala or Mexico, they would absolutely have to think about that.
So in terms of them actually having contributed to a book or analogy of short stories, etc., that would really give them a sense of self-worth.
Yeah, I love that. Oh my gosh, this has been so fun. Yeah, I'm gonna absolutely do that.
It's huge. It's huge. It's huge. Okay, how did you assess your students?
That's a great question. Okay, so we usually are, so in America, they have something called the Common Core, and it's a set of standards that all students need to be assessed on. And in the United States, under George Bush, they decided that the way that schools get funded were by these kinds of assessments, these state tests. So usually assessments are a huge deal for our school because it means that we get money. So, but we could not do any statewide testing during COVID, because you can't, not every kid has a computer. You don't know if kids are cheating, like you don't know what's happening. So we didn't do state assessments, but in our teacher, our principal basically said to us, listen, like, I want the kids just to complete the assignments for fourth quarter. We assess them based on classroom assignments. And then for a kid that had not, like we had a final project for the kids that had on Zoom, but if the kid had not turned in any work, just like was totally not around, they had the last 3 weeks to make up any work. So, and I think that there was a district-wide decision that we would not fail any student based on fourth quarter. So if a kid was making A's or B's passing for the whole year, and then fourth quarter came around, the last 9 weeks of school when we were at home, and they didn't turn in work, we could not fail them based on that.
Okay, so which means you take the previous work into consideration.
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of relationship, what was the relationship like between you and the student and you and the parents?
I think that relationship with us actually improves during online learning.
Okay.
It depends on the kind of teacher though. Like for me personally, I was meeting with parents probably more during this because on Zoom, because you were dealing with students that, like, for instance, I had a student who was an honors, meaning she was a very high achieving student. And then COVID happened and she just fell off the map. I mean, she wasn't turning in work. She was distracted. You just didn't really know what was going on. And so I asked her mom, like, can we talk? And her mom got on Zoom with me and she said, listen, this has come in a really hard time for our family because her father and I are getting a divorce. And so she's been just, ever since she had to stay home all day, she's just been totally disconnected. And, so I was basically meeting with that mom every week, and talking to this girl and being like, okay, this is what we got to do. This is what we got to do. So I, as an educator, chose to kind of draw closer, to the families. But I also don't have my own children. I didn't have to do childcare. I had the time to do that. Some parents were telling me about how anxious their student was, and they were just dealing, like we talked about before, the kids were dealing with massive mental health issues. And, I'm very sensitive to that. I know when I was a student in middle high school, I had mental health problems with anxiety and depression. So I was super sensitive to a kid that, wasn't able to deal with things because they're in a traumatic moment. So my relationships with them, with those kinds of families definitely improved. But like we were saying with the memoir, I had a student named Soraya, and she is just so fabulous, brilliant woman, great reader. I think she's gonna lead the country one day. Like, she's just an awesome, strong woman. young woman. She was in my advanced class, and she wrote in her memoir, and I was reading it one week, and it was talking about how she was so upset about online learning, and she felt really alone, and she felt like she couldn't, do well in her classes, which was unusual for her. And so I shared it with my principal, and my principal called her and just kind of gave her a pep talk, so that memoir project ended us to have better relationships with them because they were being honest with us. We were giving them an outlet, to way, which I don't know if they had at that time.
So thank you. That memoir actually did so much for the students that you would never realize.
Yeah.
Because
I didn't realize I was talking to you. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, because it's like it gave them the opportunity to express in terms of, themselves, their self-worth. They're so, when you go back and read it, right, you are going to start seeing all of those things in it. It's
so true.
It's powerful.
Yeah. And I think too, I started doing it with them. Like I would also write. So we all kind of writing together at that point. So I think continuing it on with this new group of kids, would be, and even encouraging the ones, from last year to keep doing it, would be really powerful.
Yeah, it's like journaling. It's fantastic. It's really, really powerful because it, as you rightly say, give them an outlet, somewhere to, actually demonstrate the feeling, express the feelings, which they didn't have the opportunity to do that because they're in the house with the parents, locked in, and some of them probably have never spent time with the parents. Or the parents never spent time with them. So it was a really challenging time, the parents trying to know the children, children trying to know the parents.
Yeah.
Because they spend so much time in the classroom with us that parents have to get to know the children.
Yeah, getting to know a kid as a learner and a student is hard, I think, for parents because they don't, that's different from their job. I always think my job is different than their job. I'm glad I can just let them go at 3 p.m. and, I don't have to deal with all the other stuff, but they were saddled with so much, and I think that when I was calling parents this week just to check in before school started, a lot of the questions were, is it going to be like fourth quarter? Like, what do I have to do? And, I was assuring them, no, it's going to be different. It's going to be different. They're going to have so much more support, and we do have a goal of getting back in the building sooner rather than later.
Thank you. It's interesting though, because when the parents had to support the children online, they keep on saying that they were homeschooling them. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I actually used to work with homeschoolers, so I do know that world. It's not the same as homeschooling because they're not providing the curriculum and they're not providing initial instruction. So, I think they're definitely serving as if anything, kind of like a tutor, but at the same time, we had parents that were, young moms and dads, and so they had this kind of view. Some of our parents were just like, I'm not supposed to be doing this with my kid. But I'm like, well, actually, like what you're doing with your child is just sitting with them and making sure they're doing their work. They should have, they have our instruction. If they are coming to our office hours, they're getting support from us. But some of the parents just kind of said, they didn't really understand. They didn't choose to participate in what we had set up. And then are just like, well, I'm homeschooling my kid, whatever. They just kind of used it as another way to be angry at the moment. It's not homeschooling. I absolutely know parents that homeschool their kids, and it's a whole different ballgame. You're making curriculum and delivering curriculum is a huge job. And it takes a lot. I'm still learning how to do it on lots of different levels. So homeschooling is super different. No, I don't think they're homeschooling their kids. It's a short answer.
Exactly. It's interesting. That's why I keep on, in one of the sessions, I actually had to remind people that homeschooling, you need to write the curriculum. No parents wrote the curriculum unless they are fully homeschooling their children, which means it would have started before COVID. So therefore they would have to match it up.
Yeah, like I have people that are like, oh, just started homeschooling your kid. I was like, that's not what this is. This is this is giving the kid time and structure. And by the time a kid becomes 10 or 11, if they're living in a household where there's not a lot of structure or there's a lot of chaos, that parent basically says like, okay, you're kind of a mini adult now. You're just gonna do it on your own. I heard that a lot from parents. Like, well, he's 12. He should know when to get his work. I'm like, actually, no, that's 12-year-olds don't have that skill yet. Learning how to do work, sit down and schedule work is a massive skill that even adults are learning. So I think that it's definitely a new way of parenting, but I don't think that it counts as homeschooling. I think it counts as maybe life skills coaching, if you want to put like a term on it, but that's also.
It is very true. It is very true. Right. Self-care. How was self-care for you? What did you do in terms of self-care? Did you have time for self?
Oh, well, that's a question that every teacher can never answer, honestly. No, I'm kidding. I let's see, did I have time for self-care? I think it went back and forth. I would say because I'm in a relationship where one of the things that I ask my fiance to do is to help me remind me of certain things. Did you get enough sleep? Are you drinking water? For me, exercise has become really important during this time, moving my body. That helps me out a lot. And I wish that wasn't true, but it's just how it is for me. So no, at the beginning, I did not have great self-care, but definitely coming into this year, I have decided that I am absolutely going to be proactive in my mental and physical health during this. I do meditate and I do have spiritual devotion time in the mornings. That's very important to me. If I don't, sit with God at the beginning of the day, like, who knows what I'll say to you, like, who knows what will come out of my mouth, because listen, but for me, I think also that's really important to students to model self-care. Teachers are notorious for, gaining a lot of weight when they're teaching, not sleeping, always stressing, because like we said before the call, we don't know how to say no a lot. So self-care was a struggle in the beginning, but I'm grateful to have people that, help remind me of what's important. So yeah, I actually had a conversation with one of my colleagues the other day. She came back to school and she was dealing with a lot of anxiety. And she said to me, she's in her 50s, and she said, I really had to start doing yoga. And she got free yoga through her health insurance, like she streams it. And she's like, I do yoga meditation, and I've never had to do that in my entire life, but that's what's really helped my nerves during this time. That was really
It is so, so, so important. I cannot stress enough about the importance of self-care for educators, because when you do not take care of yourself, you are pouring from an empty cup.
Absolutely. You take it out on kids. I know I did.
Exactly. Yeah, the frustration, because it's not consciously, but because you're so tired, you're stuck because you're exhausted.
Yeah. Well, and you're basically like, when I started at this school last year, I was like fueling myself on just coffee. Like I would at 8 a.m., like I'd have my second cup of coffee, like coffee and sugar, coffee and sugar, coffee and sugar. And a lot of teachers do that, and then as the stress levels from external forces with COVID came in, I'm like, wow, like I cannot manage this. Like I have got to have other stress relievers and other ways of energizing myself that are not like outside substances that also aren't good for my body. So I still drink coffee, like don't get me wrong, but like I'm not like downing Starbucks in like large quantities every day.
I think it's a sad thing. The sad thing is educators are associated with coffee. Such an unhealthy.
Right. So many coffee mugs about being a teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it is such an unhealthy thing. We need to find alternative.
Yeah, because you're expected, like we said, you're expected to be a superhero and to work 90 hours a week if you want, just to be able to always be on. And my kids they knew if I was, sometimes they'd be like, Miss Russell, do you need a minute? I'm like, I do. I need a minute. Just read or something. Just for like 2 minutes,
Yeah, yeah. That sometimes it does get a lot. That's why you see when educators are constantly doing self-care, it becomes easy to manage.
That's so true.
Because you're coming from a place of, you've done your meditation. There's sometimes, if it means doing meditation 3 sets, I do meditation with my students
Nice.
because there's sometimes during the day I realize that they're grumpy. Hell no. So we need to unwind. So we don tools and we meditate.
Yes.
So the meditation is something 5-10 minutes meditation. We do meditation, we dance, we listen to classical music, we do stretches because they need to be grounded because too often that they shouldn't just go off the rail because they're tired, they're frustrated, and then you could see the frustration coming back at you.
Mm,
So they need to take time out.
I
So
love
there's
that.
sometimes I remember last year, in this year actually, in the beginning of the year, there one time I actually forgot to do the meditation because we were dancing, we go outside, etc. And one of them said, "Oh, Miss, we haven't done the meditation." I said, "Oh yes, it's almost time for us to go home." No, no, Miss, we need to do the meditation. I said, "Okay, let's just do the meditation and closing the session." So that then become so used to doing this meditation that when they don't have it, they say, "Oh, we need to relax, Miss." And I'm thinking, "Oh, it's working." It really does work. So the same way the student need a bit of time off to recharge the battery, we need it as well.
Very true.
And it's important that we actually take that. Another question, which actually we were talking about in the when we were in the break time, the amount of praise educators were getting, how good they were.
Yeah, I know, it was so nice. And then words of affirmation on my love language. So I was all about that. They were just like, wow, like you are a superhero. I'm like, thank you. And then all of a sudden something happened in the summertime. They're just like, we were like, well, we actually might not want to go back to school like when there's not like if there's like a lockdown order, like why am I then coming into a classroom without proper PPE, like and someone's like, wow, you're being so selfish. And all of a sudden, like the tide turned and we became these like, demanding spoiled brats. So yeah, the praise the teachers were getting was wonderful. But I mean, I don't know. In America, we have a very short attention spans. So there's always a villain. There's always a hero. It just the timetables turn. So I'm sure there'll be a time um, when we will be praised again. Our governor just, I think, he just compared reopening the schools to like the raid to capture Osama bin Laden. So like he's very mercurial with how he sees teachers. He sees them as like these like military fighters. And I'm like, no, that's not what we do. This is very different. So yeah.
It's interesting because, thank you, it's not only in America that people's memory is very shallow. I believe it's worldwide.
Yes.
When the parents and everybody were having some challenges with the children, with the beautiful little diamonds, we used to say to them, little Johnny is very disruptive. No, you can't tell me about my child. My child is not like that. When they actually had little Johnny at home, and little Johnny was doing everything but sit and do the schoolwork,
Right.
It becomes, oh my goodness, I don't understand. I don't know how these teachers cope with this. But the
Exactly.
minute we start demonstrating that we are human again, that we
Yeah.
have concern about going into the classroom because the virus is still on the increase, we are being labeled all sorts.
Very true. Yeah. And that happened around the world.
Yeah, exactly. So therefore, when they're actually attaching superheroes to educators, they really feel that we're superheroes. They really feel that we from the cartoon characters.
They're like we have some sort of kryptonite or some sort of like powerful like alien force inside of us where we're not going to get sick. It's ridiculous.
Exactly. They really think so. Unconsciously, that's what they're actually making the connection with. Because the minute we demonstrate that we are human and we have fears and anxiety like everybody else, we got the attack. So this is really telling me that, whoa, they're really liking us to this character, this cartoon character of superhero, and really mean that we're superhero. So how dare you start feeling anxious. Superhero doesn't feel anxious.
Don't feel anxious. They don't show any emotion. I know I had a picture on Facebook, and it was this picture of me, and it was like I had my head in my hands, and I was just like sitting at a desk. And normally when kids see me, or parents, I'm very bubbly, I'm excited, I'm like, we're doing this. And this was just like a really real moment of like, I don't know if this is going to work or not. And I think that's really important to understand with teachers, is that while we put on a face for a kid, it's not because we don't have emotions. It's because it's not conducive to learning all the time to tell a kid I'm having a hard day. They don't really understand that a lot of times. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't mean that we don't have obligations to our bodies and our families, which I think is really important to understand.
Yeah, that is so very true. That is so very true. What 3 tips? Oh, you're going back in the classroom next week. This is brilliant. What 3 tips would you say to any educator or good practice from the online platform?
Okay, it is good because I'm practicing. Well, I think a more, and not a best practice necessarily, but just a general tip is to be patient. Patience about your timeline, that all things are not going to happen based on the curriculum map that you have or your scope and sequence that you're used to. That it's, we have lots of unknown variables this year. So be patient and be compassionate is my first tip. I don't know if it's a best practice, but if you have online platforms that have some sort of login feature that you can double for attendance, there are lots of platforms like Nearpod is one of them, where kids sign on very easily, and they do that in the first several minutes of the class. Use that for attendance purposes because it cuts out a step for you. That's like very technical, but I've found with online teaching that the less steps I have for myself, the more at ease I feel. Mm-hmm. I think the third one is, be open to the kids surprising you. Be open to them just like blowing you away in ways that you don't know about. I mean, my boss always laughs when she comes in my classroom because she's like, I come into Miss Russell's classroom and you don't really even think about RTI or, ESC or IEP. You don't think about all those technical practices because, the kids are doing creative things. And it's not that I'm not doing those things. It's just that I'm kind of doing it's like putting spinach in a smoothie. You can't really taste it. So when you're creative and you're open to kids showing up to you in ways that you're not expecting, they often do. It's like there's a quote by Albert Einstein, which I can't remember exactly, but it says like everybody's a genius at something, but if you ask a fish to climb up a tree, he's going to fail. So there's a gift of online learning in that kids of all different skill sets can show you something. A kid may be really terrible at reading, but they're a great gamer, and you'll find out why.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the things I'm going into next week with, and see how they work out.
Thank you. In terms of when you were in the online classroom, right, did you find that you're able to take anything from the physical classroom to bring straight into the online classroom, or you had to adapt? What happened?
Oh, that's a great question. I was able to take small group breakouts. I was able to take into the mobile classroom. Zoom is a great breakout room feature. I was able to take novel study into virtual classroom. I did create new things in PowerPoint or Nearpod, but I did try to keep us doing certain things that we had done in the classroom. I'm trying to remember specific things, but I think in general, we worked hard to be able to move content over. There was always a different platform we had to use because we couldn't give every kid a book, but I was able to move certain things over using PDFs. I think that what these software, I said something to someone yesterday, I think what these educational software people are seeing now that they have just massive amount of students on their sites is that it's a little harder than it looks to deliver great content and to come up with great content really quickly.
Yes.
So I think that what we're going to see is teachers, depending on like document cameras and stuff like that, where they take their lessons and just try to make it deliverable. They're not going to try to do anything fancy. I remember there are times I show teachers fancy things to do and they're like, I don't care about that. No, that doesn't matter. You know, so I don't think it's going to be as flashy as people think.
Thank you. So you're going back, when you go back into the online classroom next week, what other things you're going to take in with you? Do you think there's, you know, apart from a lot of, you know, you have a lot of knowledge now, when you actually did your online classroom the first time, that was a practice.
Right. Very much practice. I told them that every day. We're practicing. I think I'm going to definitely take some new classroom management styles in with me, you know, and that is like, you know, classroom management's like a big buzzword in the teacher world, right? How do I, you know, how many charts can I have? What's my strategy? And I know for me, I'm definitely going to have a much more of a strict policy about, you know, live sessions. I'm going to, you know, have kids have their cameras on. I'm going to be, you know, using my ability to move around the classroom a little more than I was in fourth quarter, because in fourth quarter, I was really just letting the kids that were shy just kind of not talk a lot, or kind of participation was a lot optional because of what we were going through. But now the kids have had time to prepare, you know, I think getting them back into, you know, some structure, even if it is online teaching, will be really important. So I'm going to have a participation be mandatory, you know, thing. You know, you have to actively participate. It doesn't have to be talking in front of everyone. It can be writing in the chat box. You know, what I'm taking with me is that there are lots of different ways to participate. You know, I have students in my classroom where I can't pronounce their names, and I don't want to be that, you know, white lady at the front saying the wrong name all the time, right? Like, I don't want to be that Karen. So I'm going to have them make, there's a site called Flipgrid, and it's kids can make videos and send them to me. So that's one way I'm gonna make participation. I'm gonna have kids pronounce their names. That's something I need. I want to, you know, identify you the way you need to be identified, you know, the way you were meant to be identified. So, so that's one thing I'm taking with me. The other one is compassion for, you know, the families, and like I said, with the patients, you know, it's going to take a minute for us to get all of this. You don't know what kids are waking up with. You know, they could have logged off the class just being yelled at by their dad or mom. You know, they could be on the verge of tears. You just don't know. So, and they've been with their families for so long now that you don't like. It's going to be interesting. So I'm definitely taking up more project with us. So.
Right. Wow. How are you feeling? You know, the fact that you're going back on next week. How are you feeling? What emotions have you got?
Oh, all of them. I think, I mean, frankly, I'm very excited to teach again. I'm excited to see the kids again. You know, I think that you have a big sense that you're for me, that I'm doing something that has impact, not just for me, but for others. You know, I think when you are a teacher, you automatically want to help people. But for me, I'm feeling more of a responsibility, you know, just to be a better listener, to be present. You know, I've had a lot of stress this week with things working or not working out. So I'm feeling like I definitely get to put on my self-care and listen to my colleagues. You know, teachers need to stick together. It's really important as an educator to be collaborating, not only professionally, but, you know, in a friendship way, you know, with your peers. You know, there's nothing like having a crazy day and then going in the teacher's lounge and seeing someone and just you all just relating to whatever's happening. So I need to be able to lean on my peers in an important way. So that's something I'm taking with me as well.
Okay. Okay. How did you maintain your peer friendship? You know, the fact that everybody was online. How did you guys do that?
Oh, that was so difficult. We actually had Zoom lunches. We would come
Okay.
on. Yeah, no, if you are, we are going to be in the building doing remote learning, like in our classrooms, so we will see each other. But one thing that we did is that we would get on Zoom every, like once or twice a week, and we just talk. You know, we kept the lines of communication open. And I think that was as important for them as it was for me, you know, because everyone just didn't know what was happening. You know, it was nuts.
So you guys, so you actually went into your classroom to do your online teaching?
Yes, so we are doing this thing where we're supposed to get these special kinds of cameras called owl cameras, and it's very weird. They are these like voice sensitive cameras that follow you around the classroom and have like a 365-degree camera. And so we're teaching from our classrooms, but there'll be no students there. But I think what the administration, not our administration, but like the board wanted it to be in school because they want to make sure the teachers are working. You know, they need to manage their employees. So that was they don't want to slacken from home, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, no, so that's been a big thing because you can get like if you have a doctor's note, like if you're high risk, whether you're pregnant or have diabetes or are, you know, and considered geriatric, which is like a medical age term, you can get a doctor's note and then teach from home, but most all teachers will be in the building.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. They want to make sure you guys are working.
Listen, yeah, you know, because teachers like to slack off. Like that's like
Exactly. You know.
like, what else am I gonna do? There's nothing to do. What am I gonna go to the beach?
Exactly. 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 Okay. Have you got one other factor, you know, or a few things you want to say to us before I actually summarize?
My motto for this year is to dare greatly. There's that great, it's what the Brene Brown book is based off of, that Teddy Roosevelt speech, which is about the man in the arena. So I feel like there's going to be a lot of criticisms and opinions about teachers, but all that matters are the fact that, you know, like you're saying, like the people in the arena, the people that are doing it, you know, and realizing that even though there are going to be a lot more opinions out there about what you're doing or if you're doing it, that it's about how you feel about your job at the end of the day.
Yep.
So
I totally agree with that. Thank you, everybody, that, you know, we had another fantastic session of educator explaining and demonstrating what it was like teaching on the online platform. As you all see that there have been a number of challenges, there have also been a number of triumph. And as educators, remember, we are human first and educator after. You know, we do have feelings and emotion like everybody else. I keep saying that because the minute you all keep on thinking that we are super something, it means that consciously or unconsciously, you are leaving out the fact that we are human beings. And believe me, we have human beings because we have all the emotions, the frustration, the fear, the anxiety of going back into the classroom like every job out there. What you all need to remember is, as educators, our job are very, very different. Because you do not, in terms of the supermarket, someone said to me a few days ago, oh, but the supermarkets were open. I hear you, but the cashier or the supermarket assistant, they are well protected because their customer doesn't come up and give them a hug. Their customer doesn't come close to them. But in education, our students are close right up to us, right in our faces. And some of us have to be wiping those little children's noses because they're still.
Sorry, I'm like, that's an elementary school job. I don't do that in middle school. Sorry.
Yeah, but some of us, some of our colleagues do, because some of them don't know how to wipe their noses. And some of them need assistance going to the toilet. So that is why our job as educators are so very different. So there's no way you guys could be comparing us with the supermarket assistants, because our jobs are so different. It is very unique.
Yes.
Right. Anyway, I am not, remember, I am not complaining. I am not preaching. I am just informing you of the differences so that you do not make the comparison, and so that you do not have in your head that we are lazy, that who we think we are, that we are coward and we don't like our students. We love our students. That's the reason why we do the job. Because the job doesn't give us a Bentley. It doesn't give us a Mercedes out there. It doesn't give us any of those real high up the range cars. Because the teaching, the salary we get from teaching, it doesn't do that. We are doing it because of love for the job. We love our students. We're passionate. We are so in tune with, imparting knowledge. That's the reason why we do the job, or else we'd have done something else. So please stop the comparison and stop seeing us as lazy and don't care. We do care. Thank you, everybody. And stop saying that I'm preaching. I'm not preaching. And I'm frustrated. I'm not frustrated. I'm just telling you. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for commenting. Share, comment, and like. And remember, I am doing this every day, getting an educator from around the world so that we can actually discuss what it was like or what it is like to be teaching on the online platform. From tomorrow and every Sunday, I'll be coming with a new program. This would be looking at the physical, intellectual, emotional, social, in terms of trauma, in terms of loss, that is going on with the students and the educator when they actually either go into the physical classroom or do it online. Because one of the things we'll have with students actually being taught online, they are not able to socialize with their peers. So we'll have the issue of socialization. Although we're teaching them online, they're getting the academic, but we also have to be mindful of there is lack of socialization. So how are these children going to be coping? And how would be the educator cope? One thing people are forgetting, especially parents, you have to look at what is not said. Your children are not saying a lot, and there's a lot going on. You are forcing your child to do private tuition. Do they really want to do it? They're doing it because you are telling them to do it. Do you know what is going on in their head? Do you know the fact that they're actually going through a grieving process because they haven't been seeing their friends? That, there's so much loss they're going through as well. Have you noticed that? Have you found out what's going on with your children? Those are the things I'll be looking at from tomorrow. Because as parents and as educators, we need to look at the silence and what is not said. At the end of this whole pandemic, we'll have a worldwide crisis of mental health. We need to find a way of dealing with it. Mental health in relationship to especially the young people, because as we also hear and we know that suicide rates have increased because there's a lot of silent young people out there. They might be putting on a brave face, but it is only a brave face. There's a lot of pain underneath it. Last week, someone told me that, this young guy, I know his parents, that he actually committed suicide. And the sad thing about it is the family are saying they didn't realize that he was suffering. It's real out there. So stop forcing the academic. Children could always catch up. But once you actually have emotional and psychological damaged people who cannot attach and cannot form relationship, it is much greater than the intellectual. Please remember that I'm coming from a psychological perspective and an educator's perspective. Hence the reason why I'm able to look at both of them. Anyway, you guys have a fantastic evening, night, morning, wherever you are, and join me tomorrow twice. I'm here at 4 o'clock with the Talk Everything Education. And I'm back again at 6 with my educator talking about the experience of teaching online. Take care, everybody, and thank you guys for tuning in. See you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.